So let's go to our Firebase user listener, and we have this register, and let's write the login function. So I'm going to say func login user with email, and the email, we are going to pass email, which is string, and password, which is string. And for this one, we're going to have completion as well. And let's say escaping. And we're going to pass our error here as well. And apart from error, we are going to pass also is email verified, which is a boolean. And this function doesn't return anything, we just say void. So the first registration in our callback, we only had the error passing down. And for our login, we are going to pass the error of login. And also we want to tell if the user email is verified or not. And again, in order to log in or register a user, we are going to use this authenticator from Firebase. So we're going to say auth.auth, and then we want to sign in with email, and we want to have the email and password here. So the email is going to be our email, password will be our password, and completion, I just hit enter on it. We have two options, auth data result and error. Okay, and straight away we want to get information about error. So we say if error is equals to nil and our auth data result dot user dot is email verified. So we are checking if there are no errors, and if our user email is verified, what we want to do is to get the user, this one we need to unwrap this, and I can force unwrap because before that I just check if my error is nil. And let's just put an else statement here, and I will say print email is not verified. And let's call our completion and pass our error. And is email verified, we're going to say false. Okay, and let me just get rid of these empty lines. In case if our user has verified the email, what we want to do is, again, we want to call our completion, pass any error we have. In this case, it's gonna be nil, but we're going to pass true for our is email verified variable. But before we do that, there is one more thing we want to do is, let's say our user has saved locally in our user defaults as well when we do the registration. But imagine that a user can access his account from different device, and then maybe he will go and change his username or his avatar image or anything else. And then when we take another device and we open it and we log in case if there was some local user saved, we don't want to use that. We want to get a fresh copy of user object for our current user from Firestore, which is always up to date. So we want to go ahead and download the user object from our Firebase, and then we can save it to our local database, so we can to our local user defaults. So we always have a fresh copy of user object every time our user logs in. So let's write the function that is going to go ahead and download the user object. So I'm going to do that right here, put a mark, call this download user from Firebase. It's just download, and let's create a function user from Firebase, and we want to pass a user ID that we want to download, which is a string. I'm going to pass an email as well, which is a string, but this is an optional. We may not pass this, and by default it's equals to nil. So we may pass an email address or we may not pass. And what we want to do here, in order to download anything from Firestore, again we need to access to our top level folder. So I will say Firebase reference, and we need to access the user, and then I want to get a document that has the ID of our user ID. So if I go to here, if we access the top level, then we have another document here, and by passing the ID here, I will get straight to this document. Once we get the ID, I want to get the document with completion handler, and our completion handler will be query snapshot and error, in case if there was an error. So this function downloads our user. What we want to do when we download it is to save it locally, but depending on we have this user object or no. That's why we are always going to check if whenever we are getting something from Firestore, if we have received anything back, because there may be nothing in this location that we are searching. So we will say guard let document is equals to query snapshot, else we have nothing received from our link here, and I want to do print. We say no document for user, and we just say completion. Actually no completion, we just want to return, because we don't want to call the rest of the code here if there is no user. If however there is a user, I want to try to convert this into a user object. Remember, whatever we are saving in Firebase is JSON, so we have key value pairs, and we are going to decode this. And in order to decode, I'm going to say let result is equals, I'll say result, and let's say try to decode our document, and say data as user self. So this will take our document that we have received, which is our snapshot document here, and we try to create a user object using our Firebase to decode it. And if this works, we will have our result object. So now we can check what our result was. So I'm going to switch on result, and if the result was successful, so we say case.successful, it means we have received a user object. We have successfully converted it. So I'm going to say let user object. This will be our user object. And in other case, dot failure, and in failure we have an error, so I will say call this let error, and we can print our error. We say print error decoding user, and let's pass our error here. And if everything was successfully decoded, we will have a user object. So what we want to do is, let's say if let user equals to user object, else I'm going to say print document does not exist. And if we have this user, let's say save user locally and pass our user to it. So we check if it was successful and we get a user object. Then we check if the user object is there, and only after we are going to save. Otherwise we want to print error. Or if the conversion was unsuccessfully, we just print our text here with our error message. So let's go ahead and call this function, download user from Firebase, and we are going to do that in our login. This is a register function, and this is our login function. So before I call my completion handler, I want to say Firebase user listener shared.download user from Firebase, and we're going to pass the email as well. I want to say here the user we want to download has an ID of auth data result dot user dot uid, and email will be our email that we have passed from here. So this function will go ahead and try to download the user and also save it into our local database. So let's run our project again. We haven't called this anywhere. So let's go to our login view, and we have to do this inside our login view, and we have our login user function, and inside our login user we are going to call this newly created function. So I will say Firebase user listener shared login user with email, which is our email textfield.text. Unwrap this password and completion. We are going to have error, and this boolean is email verified. Okay, and getting rid of these empty lines. So once we call this, we are going to get back an error or if email is verified. So let's check if we have an error. We say if error is equals to nil. So our user has been created. Otherwise, let's say progress AGT show failure, and I want to pass a message here. I say error localized description. Otherwise we have no error. So in this case we want to check if the email is verified. So we say if is email verified, else we will just copy this, paste it here, and instead of the error we are going to say please verify email. Okay, and if email was verified, apart from this print, let's say self.resend email button outlet is hidden equals to false. So we have access to that as well. And if email was verified, let's just put a print for now, and we will say that user has logged in. And let's access our user here. We say user dot current user email address. So we'll try to print this user has logged in with email, and this will be our email address. So this way we are checking if we have created a local user. Let's run our application. Right, so we have our email. Remember, I haven't verified it, so I'm going to say iOS dev school at gmail.com, password. Let's click login. It says please verify your email, and we have the resend link as well. Let me go ahead and verify my email. I'm not going to even, okay, email is verified. I'm not going to even change anything here. And let's see what we have in our console. It says email is not verified. Let's just clean up everything. I'm going to click again. It says user has logged in with email, and we have an optional email, iosdevschool@gmail.com. So our login is working. What we want to do here, instead of printing this out, is to take our user to the application. So I'm going to get rid of this and say go to app, and let's write this function and call it. Actually, let's get rid of this and straight away say self.goToApp, and this is a function that we are going to write together. Right now it throws an error that it doesn't exist. I'm going to do it after our register user. I'm going to put a mark, call this navigation. And let's write private func go to app. And now the error should disappear. Yep. And we can go to our navigation. And here what we want to do is just say print okay. In order for this function to work, we have to have something more in our storyboard. So right now we are not going to bother with that. Instead, we want to focus on and finish with other functions here. And in our case, we have these IB actions. Forgot password button pressed doesn't do anything, or a resend email button pressed doesn't do anything. So in our next lecture, we are going to write the two functions that are going to handle these two things that our user can do.